I think the internet has completely ruined the idea of self-improvement. Not because improving yourself is a bad thing, but because every meaningful habit eventually turns into a trend. Lock-in, monk mode, winter arc. Every few months, there's a new name for what is essentially the same idea. And for a week, it feels like everyone is transforming their life. Your feed filled with people waking up before sunrise, studying for 12 hours, going to the gym, meditating, taking ice baths, and somehow fitting an entire week's of productivity into a 30-second montage. A couple of years ago, I think locking in actually meant something. It meant putting your head down, ignoring distractions, and committing yourself to a goal without needing to tell everyone about it. Now it's become one of those phrases that's repeated so often it's almost meaningless. People announce they're locking in before they've even started, and a week later, everyone's moved on to the next trend. For a long time, I thought the problem was me. I assumed there were people who naturally woke up excited to work, while I spent half my morning trying to convince myself to get started. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized the internet isn't showing you reality. It's showing you the highlights. That's really what I wanted to explore in this video, because I think we've spent so much time talking about motivation that we've almost forgotten to talk about what comes after it. Anyone can feel inspired for a day or two after watching a good video or listening to the right podcast, but eventually life goes back to normal. You're relying on the habits and systems you've built, and I think that's where the real discipline begins. One of the simplest changes I made was waking up a bit earlier, but not because I feel you need to be awake at 5 in the morning to be successful. For me, waking up earlier was never about chasing some perfect morning routine or proving the fact that I could function on less sleep. It was about creating a small part of the day that actually belonged to me before the rest of the world started demanding my attention. You can think clearly, plan your day, read a few pages of a book, study, or work on something that's genuinely important before your phone starts filling up with notifications and your attention gets pulled in 10 different directions. Something else I realized is that having goals isn't enough if you never decide what you're actually going to do today. I used to keep these huge lists of things I wanted to achieve, but I'd sit down at my desk and waste 20 minutes deciding when to start. By the time I'd figure it out, I'd already felt distracted. Now I think it's much more useful to end each day by deciding exactly what the next day is going to look like. If you've already known the first task you're going to work on, what time you're going to start, and what time you're going to finish, you've removed one more excuse your brain can use to avoid beginning. Planning sounds boring, but it removes so much unnecessary thinking that your energy can actually go towards the work instead. I also don't think people appreciate how much your body affects your mind. Whenever I stop exercising for a while, I notice it everywhere else in my life. I sleep worse, I find it harder to concentrate, I procrastinate more, and I even feel simple tasks are heavier than they should be. It doesn't have to be an intense workout every single day, but moving your body consistently changes the way you feel in a way that's difficult to explain until you've experienced it yourself. We spend so much time trying to improve our mindset without taking care of the things our mind actually lives in. Whether it's lifting weights, going for a run, playing football with friends, or even just walking for half an hour, it all adds up over time. One more habit I think people should build is creating something instead of constantly consuming things. Most of us spend hours every single day watching videos, scrolling through social media, reading comments, or switching between different apps without ever asking ourselves what we're contributing in return. Imagine if one of these hours was spent learning YouTube editing, or writing, or coding, or drawing, or making music, or building a channel, for example. You don't have to become an expert overnight, but creating something forces your brain to think differently. Instead of passively taking in other people's ideas, you're developing your own. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest mindset shifts you can make. The internet gives us access to almost every skill imaginable, yet most of us use it almost entirely for entertainment. And this leads into something else that I think is becoming more important every year, which is learning skills that actually have value. School and university are still important, obviously, and I'm not saying you should just ignore education, but I think they're the only places where your future is not decided anymore. The internet has completely changed how easy it is to learn something from scratch. You can learn video editing from someone who's been doing it for 10 years, or learn graphic design from free tutorials, or teach yourself how to build a website, learn how to run ads, how to market stuff, how to sell something, or even build an entire business without ever having to sit in a classroom for it. And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities people overlook, because we're so used to thinking that learning only happens when someone tells us to learn. You go to school, you're given a syllabus, you have an exam, and someone tells you whether you passed or failed. But once you're outside that system, nobody is coming to you with a timetable. And if you want to learn video editing, nobody cares whether you learned it this month or next year. If you want to learn how to make money online, nobody's going to hand you a textbook and tell you exactly which chapters to study. You actually have to decide what you're interested in, find the information yourself, and then spend enough time practicing it that you become useful at it. And that's where I think the difficult part has changed. Information isn't really the problem anymore. You can find information about almost anything in a few seconds. The problem is actually sitting down long enough to do something with it. You can watch 50 videos about starting a business and still have absolutely nothing to show for it. You can watch hundreds of videos about productivity and still spend 4 hours scrolling afterwards. You can save tutorials about editing, coding, investing, fitness, or whatever else you're interested in. And you can convince yourself that you're making progress simply because you're consuming information about it. And I've definitely fallen into that myself. There's a difference between learning something and feeling like you're learning something. Watching someone else explain a skill can feel productive because you're understanding the concepts. But eventually you have to close the video and actually try it yourself. Your first attempt is probably going to be bad. Your second probably won't be much better. You'll probably make stupid mistakes and you'll get frustrated, and you'll realize that knowing what to do and actually being able to do it are two different things. And that's where the real learning starts. So if I could give you one piece of advice to anyone around my age, it would be to stop worrying so much about finding the perfect opportunity and start becoming genuinely good at something. Pick something that interests you, something that can be actually useful, and actually give it enough time to see where it takes you. It doesn't have to be your lifelong passion either. You don't need to know exactly what you're going to do for the next 20 years. You just need something worth getting better at right now. Because skills compound in a similar way to money. When you invest money consistently, you eventually start earning returns on the money you've already invested. Skills can work in a similar way. Maybe you learn video editing first, and then you understand storytelling better. That helps you make better YouTube videos. Making YouTube videos teaches you how to write titles and thumbnails. Then you learn marketing because you want more people to watch them. Eventually, you're not just someone who knows how to edit a video. You've built a collection of skills that work together. And that's something you don't really notice while it's happening. You might spend 3 months learning something and you feel like you're barely improving. But 6 months later, you're doing things that would have taken you hours before. And a year later, you might look back and realize you can do something that you couldn't even understand in the beginning. And that is why consistency matters so much more than people realize. You don't need to be exceptional in 30 days. You just need to keep putting yourself in situations where you have the chance to improve. More than anything though, I think locking in is really about simplifying your life. We've reached a point where we're trying to optimize absolutely everything. There's always another video telling you about the perfect morning routine, the perfect diet, the perfect productivity system, the perfect sleep schedule, the perfect supplements, the perfect workout. And none of these things are necessarily bad. The problem is when you try to implement all of them at the same time. You wake up and suddenly you have 15 different things you have to do. Drink water, stretch, meditate, journal, exercise, read, plan your day. Then you have to go to work for 6 hours without getting distracted and somehow find time to learn a new skill, go to gym. It sounds great on paper, but eventually something goes wrong. You sleep in one morning, you miss the gym, you spend too much time on your phone, and because you've created this ridiculously high standard productive day, one bad day feels like you failed completely. And I don't think life works like that. You don't need a perfect routine. You need a routine that can actually maintain when you're tired, busy, bored, or having a bad day. This is a huge difference between something that sounds impressive and something that is sustainable. And at the end of the day, locking in isn't about becoming a different person overnight. It's about choosing what matters, cutting out the distractions, and showing up consistently. Most days won't even feel special, but those ordinary days are what eventually change your life.